Early voting in Chicago is now open in all 50 wards through Election Day on November 5th. Remember, any voter can vote at any early voting site no matter where they live in the city. And if you haven't registered yet or you recently moved, same-day registration is available at all early voting sites. Just bring 2 forms of ID, one of which should have your current address. Go on and check voting off your to-do list and vote early. Go to chicagoelections.gov for more information. It might be getting cold outside, but it's about to get a whole lot colder at Paramount Theater in Aurora. That's because the regional premiere of Disney's Frozen, the Broadway musical, is bringing winter magic right to our backyard. Playing October 30th to January 19th, you and your family can watch Anna, Elsa, Olaf, and Sven in this heartwarming fable live on stage. Get tickets at ParamountAurora.com or call 630-896-6666 and use promo code CityCast, all one word, for $5 off. Today on CityCast Chicago. Living here, it feels like there are just some things we just supposed to know. Like, why is there a damn chair in that parking space? Why does everybody go so hard for their neighborhood and the cross streets of their granny? Why don't anybody trust their weather apps? Which city nicknames should you skip? Where do we go for the best? And you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just call them essential rules for living in Chicago. And I've got the team with me to list out our go-to. It's Thursday, October 24th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I've got executive producer Simone Alicea in the building. What's up, Simone? Say hello to all the listeners.
Hey, Jacoby. How are ya?
I ain't out here complaining. We've got producer Michelle Navarro with us. Michelle, welcome back.
Hey, Jacoby.
For everybody out there listening, it's our second to last day of our fall member campaign, where we've been asking people to throw their support behind the podcast and the newsletter, which, by the way, you can do at membership.citycast.fm. And that makes it a great time to talk about these essential rules, because that's kind of what we do in every episode, if you think about it. We give you the information you need to understand and make the most of life in the city. We help talk you through some of the most complicated issues going on in Chicago. You know, sometimes we go back and forth on what we think are some of the best things this city has to offer. So I've brought in Simone and Michelle to talk about what we think are some general essential rules for living in Chicago 365 days a year. So let's get into it. I want to know y'all number one rule, something Chicagoans have to know. And I'm going to start with our resident transplant, Simone. Moving to Chicago, what has been the number one rule that you've applied and you've told to others?
So this one might be a controversial take, but I think you should learn how to navigate this city without your apps. I think you should be able to do it without your phone. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, the apps often are just wrong. Like downtown, they kind of get all frazzled. Like if I'm in the loop, it's constantly turning around, not knowing where I'm going. It doesn't know when I'm gone Lower Wacker or try to get on Lower Wacker. It has no idea what's going on. It like gets the turns wrong at the 7-way intersections. Like it causes more stress than I think that it's worth. The other reason I think it's important is it's not that hard. Like the city is designed on a grid, right? Madison and State, 0, 0. The numbers go up in each cardinal direction, north, south, east, west.
You just lost hundreds of people. The minute you go from is not that difficult to even just trying to explain it, people immediately go, you know what? I'll deal with the app being wrong every now and then. I'm cool.
It's so easy. It's so easy to know. The lake is always to the east. The sun rises in the east, sets in the west. It is not that hard to know what direction you're going in. And is the number big, then you're really far from downtown. Is the number small, you're close to downtown. That's all you got to know.
Tell that to somebody living in a basement apartment in Garfield Park, far from the lake, can't see the sun when it comes up or goes down. I like to think that if my phone died and I was just out in the city between public transit, between hopping on a bike, between my general awareness, I'd be able to navigate the city. But it's hard for me to ask people to learn this rule or to invest in it when I know people who I can set them outside and they'd have no idea what direction they were facing in. And so I just encourage people, get the Venture app, get the Waze app, get the Divvy app. If Google Maps is wrong, maybe Waze is right. Maybe Apple Maps is right. They all three can't be wrong.
I'm not saying you have to know everything. You don't have to. I certainly don't know every street. I don't know the names.
You can't memorize them all.
It's not going to happen. But some basic concepts. Again, the numbers get bigger and smaller. You've got evens and odds on opposite sides of the street. So if you're which side of the street is the building you're looking for, that can help you out. Like, we've got some big diagonals. If you want to really like push the envelope, learn your big arterials, learn your big diagonals. Super bonus points if you know what the E-ways are called. I still don't know. When does the Kennedy become the Dan Ryan through the Jane Byrne? I don't know. I don't know all the time. But I'm just saying there are some things you can learn that'll help you out on the off chance your phone dies, you can't call an Uber, you don't know where the nearest train is, just to help you situate yourself. And it'll also help you when you're looking at like events and stuff to do and you're trying to figure out like, oh, this is in the 5100 block. How far away is that from where I am? It'll help you just have a little bit of a reference.
It also helps because people speak about the city in different terms. Some people are very general. I'm on the north side. I'm on the west side. I'm on the northwest side. Some people are community area oriented. Some people are neighborhood oriented. And then some people, like my people, they don't really know what neighborhood they in, but they know they cross streets, right? And they kind of know what that's related to. And so, yes, I'd encourage people to get a better sense of Chicago's grid and what that looks like in practical use. But man, I'd feel better just telling people to get a portable charger. Keep your phone charged.
Just learn it a little bit. I'm not saying you got to learn everything. Just a little.
Just a little bit. Michelle, what about you? What is a number one rule for you?
For me, a number one rule would be just like, and this can probably be applied to any large city, actually. Any like metropolitan area is just like general city self-awareness. And what I mean by that is basically like being aware of your surroundings. I think automatically we think about safety, like just like knowing what's going on in your surroundings. But I think also like the times that I've been able to pay attention to what's going on around me, like I catch really cool things happening in the city. It's so easy. I mean, talking about being on the apps and stuff, I think there is kind of to a point of Simone, like the times where I can just be phone free and just like look around, like when I'm like maybe still listening to music, but reading ads or flyers around me, listening to people's conversations. Also, I know it's kind of like nosy and intrusive, but like you'd be surprised how many random conversations I've gotten in because I just kind of heard someone say something and I like responded, or vice versa. Maybe I was saying something and they kind of chimed in. And I feel like that's how you fully kind of experience the magic of a city. And like I said, keep you safe, right? Like when you're crossing the street, you want to make sure that the person is looking at you. When you're on a train platform, like train platforms can be so dangerous. And when I see people just kind of like not caring about what's around them, when people are on the train and they just leave their bag like unattended, I'm like, oh my God, like someone's just gonna run and like take your shit. You know, you gotta be a little active. You gotta be a little aware.
It's definitely a city that puts you on your toes in some respect. And I think that's on all ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And like I said, I really wanted to reiterate, like, it's good and bad. Like, you don't want to miss out on something cool. People be talking about how they're trying to meet the love of their lives. Like, how are you going to meet the love of your life if you're just like not paying attention, you're not aware? Like, that's how you get your meet cutes. So I just say, like, stay aware, say hi to your neighbors if you can, say hi to people around you. Like, you'd be actually really surprised what situations you'll get put in and like the cool things that happen when you're actually like aware of your surroundings fully.
That makes me think of a saying my grandmother used to always use coming up, and it was stay alert, stay alive. And as a kid, that was very practical. It was like, know if you're being followed, be able to identify the things between like a car backing up, a gunshot, and fireworks. Like, have general awareness of what's going on in your neighborhood. But also, to your point, staying alert, staying alive, I also think is important in just like living a fulfilled life in Chicago. Like you said, walking down the street, the amount of flyers you might see, the amount of people standing outside of one comedy club promoting a comedy show on another side of the city, the amount of art galleries that are in small theater spaces that you could completely walk by if you're not paying attention. So I think staying alert in the sense of there's always more to the picture in Chicago. There's always something else going on, something to be doing, something to be learning, exploring for the first time. And yeah, keeping your head up.
Jacoby, what's your number one rule that Chicagoans have to know?
I mean, this is a rule that has gotten reinforced for me, crystallized to me in the last almost 4 years during this podcast. And it's that Chicago being a city of neighborhoods and community areas and segregation, like this reality impacts almost every aspect of our daily lives. Like, and knowing this can encourage deeper connection to your community like Michelle, or it can encourage more citywide exploration. Like growing up, where I was a South Side shorty, I could tell you everything that was happening south of 35th Street from Cicero to Stony Island with like a good photogenic memory. I knew restaurants were there and that were gone. Best places to go, like hang out with your friends, which basketball rims were most forgiving at the park. And I thought that was all of Chicago. And then as I got older and older, I realized millions of people feel just like me about their small pocket of the city. And so because I know how segregated we are, I know there's opportunity to see a completely different version of Chicago by going 20 minutes outside of my neighborhood. There's always another restaurant. I disdain people who say there's nothing to do in Chicago, nothing to see, nothing to explore, because then you ask them where they've been, what they've done, like what have they looked into, and they give you such a small little window of Chicago. And so I think by understanding how disconnected our neighborhoods are, how different our neighborhoods are, both in good ways, the cultural diversity, and in the bad ways in terms of the lack of resources, I think it invites a little bit of patience. It invites empathy. It invites curiosity. If you just know this basic fact that it's inescapable, everything from why are some streets better plowed in the winter to why some neighborhoods are hotter, it informs so much.
It literally will inform every news story that you will read or that we will talk about on this show. If you know this one fact, like your baseline for understanding this news story has already gone up.
Yep.
If you love grabbing a drink with a friend, and if democracy's on your mind this election season, and of course it is, you should volunteer with Beers and Ballots. Beers and Ballots empowers you to get off the sidelines and into the game this election season. It's a fun, easy way to facilitate conversations with prospective voters and their swing state friends over free beers. And if you were the owner or manager of a bar or coffee shop or entertainment venue, Beers and Ballots can increase your revenue and increase foot traffic by 10 to 15%. Here's what to do. Go to beers.vote to learn more about how Chicagoans can get involved and to sign up. Again, that website is beers.vote. Vote like your beer depends on it. This ad was paid for by Movement Labs, LLC.
Chicago's favorite holiday tradition is back at Lincoln Park Zoo and celebrating 30 years. Tickets are now on sale for Zoo Lights, presented by ComEd and Invesco QQQ, running November 15th through January 5th. Get ready for fun seasonal activities like photos with Santa, live ice carving, rides, holiday characters, and more, all surrounded by, get this, 3 million dazzling lights. Catch interactive light displays in the Light Lounge and grab a quick hot cocoa and other festive treats as you wander through the illuminated zoo. And be sure to check out other fun holiday events like Adults Night Out Holidays in December. Zoo Lights will start November 15th and run through January 5th. Tickets are $7 to $10 with select free nights. Get your tickets at lpzoo.org/zoolights to learn more and secure your spot before it sells out. This episode is brought to you by Mubi, a global streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema. Stream beautiful hand-picked films anytime, anywhere. Be sure to catch the cult classic The Fall, now streaming exclusively on Mubi in spectacular new 4K restoration. Filmed across 24 countries over a period of 4 years, Tarsum Singh's ostentatious epic sees a bedridden stuntman played by a magnetic Lee Pace spin an escapist fantasy for a hospitalized young girl. The story transports her into the exotic landscapes of her imagination, backdropped by magnificent costumes and stunning locations. Don't miss your chance to experience this film like never before. You can start streaming The Fall and more for 30 days free at Mubi.com/CityCast. You heard me right, 30 days free at Mubi.com/CityCast. We're going to get back into our essential rules in just a second. But first, I want to thank everybody who has become a member during this campaign so far. Seriously, we get a notification every time y'all sign up, and it fills us with that. Oh, is it dopamine? Is that the one? Is that the good one?
I think
that
so.
Your body gives off?
It's the
I was gonna say
reward chemical.
serotonin. Yeah. I feel it immediately. Y'all have been really showing your support. And today we want to keep that momentum going because, it's almost over.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you've been hearing our messages all week. Maybe you've been hearing it and you're like, I'll become a member later. I'll get to that later. It's Thursday. Later is now. Now is the time. And I think now is a great time to join because not only if you join and become a member today during this campaign, not only do you get our members only tote bag, which is beautiful, gorgeous, going to be the accessory of the season in Chicago. Not only do you get the tote bag, you'll also be supporting the people who make this show every single day, the ones who are here talking to you right now, me, Jacoby, Michelle, and also our newsletter editor, Sydney Madden. Michelle, why should the people join our membership community today?
Well, we know you love the deep dives into politics, stories about your favorite local spots, and those quirky, unexpected conversations that make Chicago the amazing place it is. From sit-downs with the mayor, to your local DJs, to people hanging out the swap meet, to the city's best mascot, Benny the Bull. This is the stuff that matters to you, and we absolutely love bringing it to y'all. But here's the deal. We can't do it without you. And also, you should join because becoming a member is so easy. It's like paying for one fancy latte a month, but with way more community impact.
Seriously, all you got to do is hit the link in our show notes or head over to membership.citycast.fm. It's going to take you like 2 minutes to become a CityCast Chicago member. And after you join, you get that, that nice little warm feeling of supporting our team of local journalists doing what we love to do and you love to listen to, bringing y'all the stories that matter to Chicago. And again, if you already a member, thank you. We appreciate you. Like for real, you already been here holding us down, and we got all these new friends to come join the tribe with you. Seriously, we couldn't do this without you, and we're grateful for all of y'all joining our community.
All right, so that's our pitch. So let's keep it moving with these essential rules. With some of the stuff that we talk about a lot in Chicago, I've noticed that it's not so much that there's a hard and fast rule of do this or don't do this. But I do feel like I've noticed that there are a lot of things that you have to have an opinion about. Or you have to know that people have opinions about it. You know what I mean? It's just stuff that it's going to get you into a debate if you talk about it. Michelle, what do you think is something that if someone asks you about it, you better have something to say?
I would say the weather, specifically our winter. Every single year, it's the same conversation about how cold it is and how miserable we are once it turns dark at 4 p.m. and just how cold our apartments are and we have to wear all these layers. It's just always going to come up, and it never gets old, but it gets old, but it'll never get old because we just know it's always going to happen. I personally, if you're going to actually ask me what I think about it, as much as I complain about it, I do appreciate it because it's beautiful to have all the seasons, and I feel like I earned the summer. I think about people who are in California and who are miserable, and I'm like, damn, you're really miserable all year round with that nice weather. I feel like my misery, I have a reason for my misery. I have an excuse, and it makes me feel better about it.
We have an external thing that we can always blame for when we're not in a good mood.
Exactly. And so every time we hit February, March, April, the excitement that starts to begin of getting ready for summer and just the days getting longer, it makes it all worth it.
I think people who are on the extreme of either summer or winter haters honestly have just lost perspective. My family is from Houston, Texas, Shreveport, Louisiana, and CB Road, Mississippi. And so it's always hotter in the summer where my family is. And in the winter, I don't know, I lived through a Syracuse winter where the snow was higher than stop signs. And I've been up and through Minnesota in the dead of December, in the height of February, and that's some of the worst cold I've ever felt in my life. And so people whose entire personality is just like weather opinions, I'm always just like, hey, we all gonna complain. We all got our thoughts. I love talking about fall fashion, but like people who just can't get right, and it's always, it's too hot or it's too cold. Relax, Brady. Relax.
Talking about the weather is the quintessential small talk topic. I think Chicagoans have elevated it to a profession. Like, not only do you have to stake your sides on like which season is your favorite season, but you also, it's like the different practices of, okay, within winter, what's actually cold and what's not cold? Like, is dibs okay or is it not okay? Like, you got to be prepared to actually engage in a conversation beyond, oh, kind of rainy, hasn't it? No, you got to have an opinion about that rain.
It's got to be a whole thing.
Jacoby, what's something else that you think Chicagoans kind of have to have an opinion on, it seems?
Food. No matter where you grew up, what neighborhood you live in, what you like, who got the best mild sauce, who got the best Italian beef or the best sweet steak. And it gets to a point where, like, y'all have heard it in our conversations on the podcast, people hesitate when we ask them their favorites, not because they don't have them, but they're afraid to piss somebody off. And I think food conversations are too much. We just had someone again reinforce the idea that Chicagoans don't eat deep dish. Yes, they do. We wouldn't have this many restaurants across the city if Chicagoans were not also eating it. Sure, it may not be on our flag, but the way people feel like tribalism through food is at times very cool. Because anybody who comes here and is like, oh, Chicago doesn't have good insert tacos, they're wrong. Barbecue, they're wrong. South Asian food, they're wrong. But the infighting that we have over our very specific options, locations, oh my God. Some days I feel bad for the Heralds on 53rd. Like the kind of hate that they get.
Hey, you deserve hate if you're going to Harold's in Wicker Park.
See? You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying, y'all? This is what I'm talking about.
This is another one of those things that works at every level. It's like, you know, are you deep dish or are you tavern style? Okay, you're tavern style, but which tavern style? Like which spot? It just permeates every single level of the conversation.
And I love to pretend I'm above it until we having a conversation. And I realize, I'm just as guilty as everybody else.
No, you've got opinions.
And everyone's going to think that they have the best taste. Like, I personally think I have the best taste. I'm sure someone else is going to say, like, no.
Oh, I know I have the best taste, Michelle. That's
Hey, this kept me away from Uncle Remus for almost 30 years, y'all.
Yeah.
And couldn't even tell you when I first knew that was a thing and that I was involved in this thing, but like Sox versus Cubs,
in this rivalry that had gone for generations without your
exactly like Sox versus Cubs or Bears versus Packers. I was involved in something I had no choice over. Simone, what about you? As somebody who has made Chicago their home, what is something that particularly native Chicagoans seem obsessed about, have opinions about, that it just wasn't like that back in Seattle?
Okay. I think it's wild that in a city of 2.7 million people, you run into someone and they're like, yeah, I grew up in Chicago. And the very next question is, oh, what high school did you go to? Oh, without fail, what high school did you go to? You will hear this question asked among people who grew up in the Chicagoland area. And your answer to that question will then determine that person's disposition toward you for the rest of the conversation. Like, it matters. It makes a difference. It is, I don't know. It's just, I think it's just something that in a city this large, the fact that people know the high schools or know them, know at least some stereotype
know enough
of
about
them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it boggles my mind, frankly. I don't know. You two grew up here, so you got to explain this to me.
My homies beam with pride when people ask them what high school they went to, because they was in high school at Simeon during Derrick Rose state championship years. And they will inform you about all of those things. They not only going to tell you they was at Simeon, they going to first coyly tell you what years they was there to see if you know what
Can you make the connection? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we was in high school from 05 to 09. Derrick Rose was there when we was in high school, right? It's like that. It's like that episode of Southside. It's like, yes, I knew Eddie Curry. Like, he used to come to all the games, right? It's like, I remember being in high school and being around the city and telling somebody I went to Mount Carmel. First question: oh, you play football for Frank Lindsay? Oh, you play football? Oh, you must play football. Oh, you must play football. Oh, you must play football.
Well, Jacoby, did you play football?
I couldn't pass the physical because of a knee injury. But how many times I got to tell people my medical history because I went to Mount Carmel. So of course, now we talking about football. Yes, I was in class with Jordan Lynch, one of the all-time best college running quarterbacks ever. Yes, we was in math class together when he told the math teacher, "I'm gonna be the starting quarterback." Chicagoans are obsessed with their high schools. It's gonna come up regardless. So have your answer ready, or avoid the question. It's not something we can just casually talk about.
And watch people's reactions. Get to know what the stereotypes are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like just like Chicago's distinct neighborhoods. Like people can come up with a stereotype at the top of their head of like, you tell someone what high school you went to and they think they know everything about your, like how you grew up and what it was like. I went to a newer high school, and so I feel like I get kind of excused from that judgment because my school opened in 2010 in my neighborhood. And so people will be like some people will know where it is, but most people won't, especially if you're not from the Southwest side. But then when I tell people like, oh, it opened, but if I didn't go there, my neighborhood school would have been Gage Park. And they'll be like, oh, like I get that because that's where my sister went. And so it's interesting to see.
Or you'll get the reverse of like, it comes up like if you went to Whitney Young or you went to Lane Tech or one of Chicago's other selective enrollment schools, like someone will be like, oh, I'm a CPS grad. And they'll be like, oh, what school did you go to? And then they'll be like, Jones Prep. And they'll be like, oh, I see. Like, you know what I mean? Like you get it on the other side too.
It's just like when you were bringing up like Whitney Young and Lane Tech, I feel like because those are like the top, like have always kind of been like people are proud to go there, and you understand why. Obviously, like
they're very well resourced schools.
Yeah, and really smart kids go there. So of course, but it's just funny because the reactions are really big.
It's also funny because it's so passed down from parents in some respects. Like my high school at one point would have been Percy L. Julian. Out on 103rd, but my parents really wanted us to go to Mount Carmel, and they already have their ideas around like what it means to like go to a private school versus CPS. And as a kid, I'm just like, I'm gonna go to high school. My parents say I'm gonna go to high school, and so you realize the broader conversations that are happening in your families, that are happening in your neighborhoods, and you can't help but in some ways get indoctrinated for better or worse. All right, so we talked about things you should do, but there's also stuff that Chicagoans, let's be real, they kind of hate by default that you should just know. What are one of those things that we don't really like, Simone? It could be a pet peeve. It could be something we have a deep hatred for.
Anytime, particularly when people outside of the city who are not from Chicago, any variation of referring to Chicago as Chirac or asking sort of like, oh, is it safe? Like, oh, you're going out and like, oh, you live there. Is it safe? Do you feel safe? In a way that is clearly not genuine. It's not a genuine concern about safety, about violence. It's clearly because Chicago has this stereotype that kind of comes with it, and the way that has been sensationalized. To me, that is so frustrating because it's like, for so many people in their daily lives, right? We're doing things that everyone else is doing. I'm going to the grocery store. I'm going to the bar. I'm going to the coffee shop. I'm like going to go visit my friend. I'm going to go to this party. And like, it just like demonstrates like the way that violence is so misunderstood in this country of you know, not only just sort of the sort of like societal factors that lead to violence and sort of that element, but also the fact that like most violence is not random. You know what I mean? Like most violence is perpetrated, you know, due to some kind of interpersonal issue, right? That the people, the parties involved know. And yes, like of course a carjacking can happen or you know, a robbery or something like that. But like that's also just kind of true in places.
I literally wrote my graduate thesis about Chirac as a term. And inside of Chicago, it causes division between people who use it, people who grew up in, you know, the South and West Side neighborhoods and where the term sort of emerged. And, you know, people in the city who don't want that to be a representation of Chicago. But when we're talking about outsiders, people who are like visiting, I had people I went to college with or knew in college who would come visit in Chicago, and I would see on their like Instagram in their story and their posts that, oh, I'm in Chirac. And I would immediately be in the comments, in the DMs, just like, bro, take that down. Gee, take that down. That's not what it is. And so I'm never one who is going to tell Dirk to stop saying it. But if you're not a Chicagoan and you're not from the neighborhoods that have been disinvested to the point that they see themselves in this light, we do not like it. We do not like it. Michelle, what about you? What is something that you absolutely hate when it comes to the city?
I think something that bothers me most often than not is when we get compared to New York.
Yep.
And they're meant to be different, you know, and they offer different things, and we're in two completely different regions. Though I do like when people say that we are cleaner than New York, because I agree for sure. But yeah, I just generally don't like it. Like, I just think Chicago has so much to offer as a city. It being in the Midwest just gives it this Midwest sensibility that I absolutely love.
Right. Obviously, New York is a much older city. You know, they're a much larger city.
Like way larger. I think people forget that like we're talking about 2.7 million Chicago. New York City has 8.2 million. And Chicago's, put it this way, New York City's budget is double Illinois' budget. So like, this is not the same.
I do get Chicago's got that like weird chip on its shoulder. And I identify with that. I really do. I really identify that in Chicago.
Yeah, I was about to say too, it's like, I think it's funny because a lot of, and I'm being one of them, but a lot of like Chicagoans will be like, we're nothing like New York. And then like, I feel like most times people from New York like are just like, don't participate in the conversation. They don't even think of us. No, they don't even think of us. And so, yeah, I think it's usually like other people and us that we probably put that in our heads when like, yeah, New Yorkers aren't even thinking about us.
Jacoby, what about you? What is one of these things that, I don't know, Chicagoans kind of hate by default?
All right, so this is a nuanced one because a good amount of folks from Chicago do have a way about them when people say they're from Chicago just to find out that they're from a suburb. Like, I'm not sure if other major cities have get as put off by people who say they're from the major city, but they live outside the city. Like, I feel like Dallas embraces its larger metropolitan area. It's always the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? In Houston, when I was in Houston over the summer, I didn't feel like people from outside Houston ever have a problem with the people who live right outside. Same with Atlanta. It's almost expected that most people who say they live in Atlanta live 20 minutes outside the city. But when you get into the Chicagoland back and forth, I will say that all suburb hate and love is not equal, because many of the Chicago South suburbs, and I'm thinking like Dalton, Calumet City, Harvey, all the way even down to like a Chicago Heights, like a lot of these end up feeling like just far South Side community areas in some respect, particularly in the way that we talk about them. If somebody tell me they from Chicago and then they say Harvey, I'm like, bet. But if you say I'm from Chicago and then you say, actually, I'm from West Chicago, I'm from Schaumburg,
or Wilmette,
Aurora, or DeKalb, I'm like, it's an overall different relationship. And maybe that's because the level of contentiousness with those townships might be different. The vibe of the people who move to those neighborhoods and how they feel about the city may be a little bit different, but and also a lot of my family members lived in the south suburbs. I know a ton of people from Chicago who just moved 20 minutes further south for like maybe taxing purposes or something. And so, yeah, the south suburbs is, when we say we don't like the suburbs, we not talking about the south burbs.
It is interesting because I do think like the South Side kind of claims the South suburbs in a way that the North Side does not really claim the North Shore. The other wild thing to me is like, I think to another point you made, like distance is also a factor here too. Like there are people in Aurora, which is the second largest city in Illinois, by the way. You know, many of them will say, and you can kind of understand where they're coming from. I understand people like just want to say the closest city that people will actually know will sort of say they're from Chicago or the Chicagoland area. But like Aurora is not in Cook County. And again, they're the second largest city in the state that you would think maybe would be able to kind of stand up. And I think there's sort of similar feelings, I think, about like Naperville, which is relatively large, you know, for one of these suburban cities, where you're like, why do you got to claim Chicago? Like, you're not that close. You're not that close.
45 minutes outside the city, Brody.
Well, and depending on where you like to, for me, it'll take me much longer than that to get to Naperville.
I'm always thinking about the furthest neighborhood. How far are you from the closest border of Chicago?
Yeah. But you know, Chicago's big, so that could mean any number of things.
Obviously, depending on who you are, what neighborhood you live in, and if you're from the city or if you moved here, you could have your own different essential rules, your number one rule, your biggest pet peeves, and we want to hear all of them. Let us know by leaving us a text or a voicemail at 773-780-0246. This breakdown of our essential rules was brought to you by executive producer Simone Alicea.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
Producer Michelle Navarro.
Thanks, Jacoby.
And host Jacoby Cochran. Thanks, Jacoby. Before we let you go, make sure you bookmark our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you can subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago. You can find all of our social media platforms. And while you're there, check out our recent walking guide. I know, it's me walking through like 87th Street, 53rd Street, just some old neighborhoods. I got you. Of course, I can't let you go without some good news. If you got some time, get over to the National Museum of Mexican Art to see this year's Dia de Muertos exhibition, Where the Past is Present. And on Saturday at Harrison Park, pull up because the museum is putting on Dia de Muertos Chicago. Folks can enjoy ofrendas created by community members, live music, and art installations and activities starting at 3 o'clock. And remember, our fall campaign is chugging along the rest of the week. Become a CityCast Chicago member, and not only do you get all the good feelings and the great perks from helping out the homies, but if you join during the campaign, you'll also receive an exclusive CityCast Chicago tote bag. I got mine on me right now. I know some of y'all been listening all week and thinking, you know what? I ain't giving y'all no money, and I hear you, but I'm telling you, the tote bag is fine. It's big enough to keep your Katie Guy bands tucked. Just hit the membership.citycast.fm right now to join. And if you're already a member, either from this week or before that, I appreciate you. I see you. We couldn't do this work without you. I want to give a special little shout out to our new member, Kirsten Baji. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Seriously, made me cry at like 9 a.m. earlier this week. The messages y'all send mean the world to us. I hope you enjoy your candy shopping this weekend. To the rest of y'all, we're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. Hopefully you'll join us. Peace.